Trade unions are the largest, most democratic organisations in this country. They're far more democratic than governments. They have got far more regulations controlling how they operate than companies. The level of regulation and employment law restricting trade unions has now reached a point, I think, where most people accept that the balance of power has swung against unions. What we find when we take surveys is that unions are very popular and they're growing in popularity in the UK.
Right.
And if you talk to young people who don't have that myths of, you know, Winter of Discontent and all that in their memory, then they just see unions as good. In fact, the pandemic has highlighted that because more and more people see unions as being the only ones who would save them during the pandemic. So, for instance, when the NEU, when education unions called people out to say we're not going back to work, people did it. They don't see unions as being overpowering, overbearing or undemocratic. I think they see them as being necessary in our society to bring a rebalancing of power in the workplace. Power has swung far too much in favour of the employers.
Let's finish then with a bit of context, because these younger people coming through, whether they're millennials or however you want to, whichever sort of glib branding you want to give these social groups, when you look across Europe and you see really good workers' conditions, good holiday pay, better levels of pay, less precariousness when it comes to contracts, etc. When young people see that, that becomes the threat of a good example, doesn't it? Because they think, well, if they're doing it in Spain, if they're doing it in France, they're doing it in Germany, they're doing it in the Netherlands, why aren't we doing it? So suddenly it becomes less about the Winter of Discontent, wildcat strikes and all that militant stuff, and it becomes about, well, hang on, they're doing it, we want that too. Is that awakening starting to happen when we look across to Europe?
I think so, yeah. I think people are, well, we tell them it all the time. Workers in the UK work the longest hours for the lowest pay, for the shortest holidays, retire the latest, have the lowest pension than workers throughout Europe. Why is that? Why is that? You know, we are the sixth richest nation in the world, and yet we are paying some of the lowest wages in terms of how other people are operating throughout Europe. So I think people do, in that sense, put the dots together and say, we know another way is possible. So they look, for instance, at working time and the hours that other workers do throughout Europe, far better working hours than we have. They have a better social security safety net than we have here. The answers are there for people to see.